Numbing to maintain importance. Maintaining appearances in the soccer community allowed me to remain relevant on the outside. Coaching filled my cup immensely, but I was slowly being tortured and destroyed on the inside. I began shifting into a group of friends that my family couldn't understand as a result. I still maintain a couple of friends I had from the high school girl gang, but the circle we rolled with was not the same. Little by little, I found myself amongst much more experienced partiers, and one particular guy took a liking to me. I quickly learned that he was also a good kisser, and that hanging around him suddenly made people act just a little bit different towards me. While I usually preferred to be invisible, being with him made me seem even cooler amongst the party kids. I started being invited to frat parties and somehow found my way into a whole other circle of college experiences that I was completely naive to. Everywhere I'd go, people seemed to think I was cool and important. Not long after our first kiss, he became my boyfriend. I would ride in his cool car to go meet his cool mom, and we would listen to cool music. It was never about staying long at his mom's, more about the drive out of town to get to her house. We would roll down the windows, blare the music, and nothing else in the world seemed to matter when he'd look over at me. One hand on the wheel, one hand in my lap, he would look at me with those glossy green eyes, and I would just melt. He was so cool. We would arrive at his mom's house, and she would often meet us outside. She loved me and often made it a point to catch up with me. She would hand him a plastic baggie of his medications, and we would be on our way. Knowing how much pain I was constantly in, he permitted me to have a few of his pills anytime I needed some extra support. I was no longer getting the good stuff from my doctor since I had refused back surgery, so I needed all the help I could get. He was the first boy through whom I had learned what it meant to have wild and steamy sex. He took me to places I had never been before with anyone else, and he taught me how deep into surrender I could go to turn pain into pleasure. I'd spend my days numbing as hard as possible with pain pills and alcohol, and then when tangled up with him, turn that pain into pure ecstasy. Once I had a taste of that kind of sex, I needed more, and more. It was not long before I'd beg him to bite me, scratch me, bruise me, anything he needed to do to get me off. I had standards, of course. I was still living this double life of a good girl, so he wasn't allowed to touch my face, and he wasn't allowed to leave hickeys on my neck. There was not much trashier than a hickey on someone's neck, and I wouldn't have any part of it. From the shoulders down, however, was all fair game. He would make me bleed, leave bite marks on my skin, and bruises of every shape and color. I carried them as badges of honor of the wild sex life we had, with no regard to anyone else's thoughts or opinions. We would often have people over at my house, and I hated it so much because I knew we were way too loud and way too disruptive on weeknights, but people still loved to come over, so I rolled with it. It was common for a few people to pop in and out regularly, but on the nights that turned into full-blown parties, I couldn't drink enough to stop my skin from trying to crawl off my bones, so I would retreat into my bathroom and pull out the bottle that I kept tucked under the sink. I would pull out a few of the pills from my boyfriend's baggie and chase them down with a couple swigs of the under-the-sink vodka. Then I would sit fully clothed on the toilet while I waited for them to kick in. The second my mind would get quiet enough to not think much, I would find my way back to the party. Everyone would be so wasted, no one even noticed how long I'd been gone. This became the normal routine, and no one seemed to be the wiser.